Hi everybody. As you see here, last session I showed you descending tracts. So descending tracts including pyramidal and extrapyramidal tracts. In my previous video I showed you one of the most important pyramidal tracts, which is known as the corticospinal tract. So as its name suggests, it starts at the level of the cortex of the brain and it crosses the brainstem to get into the spinal cord. That's why it's called corticospinal tract. Why it is one of the pyramidal tracts? Because it crosses the pyramid of the medulla oblongata. So if you watch my videos, previous videos, you are familiarized with this model. So from the anterior view, you can see the midbrain. This part is the pons, and down here we have medulla oblongata. So on the anterior view of the medulla, we have two projections. They are called the pyramid. So corticospinal tract crossing the midbrain, pons, and finally it crosses the pyramid of the medulla oblongata. That's why it is called the pyramidal tract. Whereas the extrapyramidal tracts, as its name tells us, they are crossing the brainstem outside the pyramid. That's why it's called the extrapyramidal tract. Today I'm gonna talk about one of the most important extrapyramidal tracts. It is called rubrospinal. Rubrospinal tract, the word rubro means red. It's a Latin word because it starts at the level of the midbrain. Within the midbrain here we have two red nuclei. So this area is midbrain, and within the midbrain we have two red nuclei. So for the descending tracts, we have two motor neurons, upper motor neurons and lower motor neurons. The cell body of the upper motor neuron of the rubrospinal tract is within the red nucleus. So imagine that this is the cell body of the upper motor neuron, and then axon exiting the red nucleus and crossing the midline like this. It makes a decussation. The word decussation means crossing, and then it runs all the way down, crossing the pons, crossing the medulla, and then get into the spinal cord. Here is the spinal cord. This decussation is known as the ventral tegmental decussation. Ventral tegmental decussation, and then it runs all the way down to get into the spinal cord. What will happen within the spinal cord? If you take a cross section through the spinal cord, we have something like this. So we have butterfly shaped gray matter, which is surrounded by the white matter. These are the white matter. Gray matter has ventral horns and dorsal horns. White matter has columns, ventral, dorsal columns, and lateral columns. So when it goes down, it lands here, just lateral column of the white matter of spinal cord. So corticospinal tract also lands here. So they are so close to each other. In some textbooks, it's called they are intermingling to each other. It seems that the rubrospinal tract is a little brother of the corticospinal tract. It assists corticospinal tract. So what will happen when the corticospinal tract landed here? So it ends up here synapsing onto the cell body of the lower motor neuron, which is within the ventral horn of the gray matter. This is the cell body of the lower motor neuron. And then the axon of the lower motor neuron exiting the ventral horn and then passing through the ventral root to get into the muscles, skeletal muscles. What is the function of the rubrospinal tract? So rubrospinal tract mainly, the function is a little bit controversial. you'll probably come across with different functions in different textbooks. But most of the textbook mention that it's regulating the flexor muscles of the distal part of the upper limb, hand. So it assists the flexion of the upper limb muscles and hand muscles and helping the corticospinal tract. So this is the rubrospinal tract. These two red nuclei receive some afferents from the cortex here and from the cerebellum there. So if you watch my previous videos, we have some afferent fibers coming into the cortex of the brain and some afferent fibers coming into the cerebellum. We have dorsal column tract. It's carrying the sensory information from the joints related to the conscious proprioceptive, to the thalamus, and finally to the cortex. Now your cortex, aware of your limbs in this space, the posture of the limbs in this space consciously. We also have some fibers like spinocerebellar, which is related to the unconscious proprioceptive. So unconsciously, your cerebellum are aware of the position of your limbs in this space. So consciously and unconsciously, brain and cerebellum, they know the position of your limbs in this space. So they are planning to each other and send some fibers to the red nucleus and stimulate red nucleus, and red nucleus sent down to the spinal cord, which is known as the rubrospinal, and regulates the flexor muscles of the upper limb mainly. It helps the corticospinal tract to flex the distal part of the upper limb to do skillful jobs. In a daily basis, we do lots of skillful jobs. So corticospinal tract needs a rubrospinal as a little brother to help them to do flexion of to regulate the flexion of the hand and distal part of the upper limb. So we have some fibers coming down from the cortex. It is called corticorubral, cortex to the red nucleus. So they are stimulating the red nucleus. Actually, it's some collateral branches of the corticospinal tract. So it runs all the way down as the corticospinal tract. Some collateral branch of the corticospinal tract stimulating red nucleus, and they are known as the corticorubral. We also have here cerebellum. At the back of the brainstem, we have cerebellum. Within the cerebellum, we have some nuclei, deep nuclei. Some of them are called globus. The other one is known as the emboliform. So imagine that here we have globus, and this is the emboliform, globus and emboliform. And they also send some fibers to the red nucleus and stimulate the red nucleus. It's called globus emboliform rubral. So corticorubral, globus emboliform rubral, they are stimulating the red nucleus. Then red nucleus sends some information to the skeletal muscles of the hand and distal end of the muscles through the rubrospinal cord to assist the corticospinal tract to do flexion of the hand and also the distal end of the upper limb. Thank you so much.